Jett, there's been a lot of news surrounding online toxicity with social media specific to gamers. There's been a couple big stories with Spider-Man. The Last of Us Part 2 is a big one. There's been a lot of stuff specifically that's been more public than normal, because I mean a lot of the online stuff is kind of contained in a box because either you know about that world or you don't. But with these online games, as big as they are, as crazy as these threats are, I mean that's a really big thing. So for this segment covering social media toxicity, Jett, this is all you. So you go ahead and take the floor and see where we go.
When I started doing the research of this, I was just kind of looking through some of the tweets and stuff like that, and somebody posted a quote from Oscar Wilde that, for me, hit the nail on the head. It says, "Give a man a mask, and I'll show you his true face." And that is what the internet does at this point in time. We talked a little bit about it, like that fearlessness from repercussions and stuff like that. We've seen these kind of threats kind of slowly and gradually start gaining momentum, unfortunately, over the years. I mean, we had Gamergate a few years ago, which was kind of the catalyst for what we see, and that's a whole different, a whole different podcast to get into.
Yeah.
And then we get The Last of Us 2, where Neil, the leaks happen, and Neil gets the death threats, and then people start playing the game, and Laura gets the death threats. And then they drop the news about the PS5 remake for Peter Parker's the voice actor's face becoming more of the predominant what it's going to be. And it's kind of mind-boggling that as a community, we are so gung-ho on ownership of what honestly boils down to ones and zeros. That's all these are. They're ones and zeros. None of these fake characters are real. For as much as Spider-Man and Joel and Ellie and all this stuff that have touched our lives, they're not real in the long run. We see POCs, people of color, getting told that they're only there to fill a quota, or that they're there just because of their skin tone.
That's a good fucking point. I remember when the branding came out, it was one of the Battlefield games, right? And it was the first time an African-American gamer was like on the cover of it. And I think I remember a bunch of people flipping out because, that it's supposed to be a white guy. And now it's, what's it going to be if it's a black guy next? What is it going to be next time? Is it going to be, an Asian woman or whatever? And like people were just so outraged at who the person was. Like, what gave you the right to flip out about something that you had no creative input on? You're not a writer for the game. You're not a producer for the game. You're not a developer for the game. You're a consumer. I have no right to tell you how to make a Instapot. I have no right to tell you how to make a refrigerator. I can critique the one that you made, but like that's on you to do that shit. Like it's just crazy that there's like this sense of entitlement with everything that's just unjustified in my opinion.
Well, to go onto that too, I mean, like, did having an individual of color on the cover affect the game in any way, shape, or form? No, it's literally just the cover of the game case. You throw the game case in a drawer anyways. Why does it matter?
And it's been a while since it came out, but if I remember correctly, weren't they trying to tell a story specifically about a battalion out of like Harlem in New York? Like, wasn't that a big part of that? So not only was it this person, but it was also this person's background who hadn't really been represented in a military game. And so I'm a Marine Corps veteran. So like, I want you to tell me those stories. I want to hear about the stories of battalions that I'd never heard of before and the different ways that they were impacted and stuff. Like that is a totally normal thing. And I just don't understand the outright misplaced outrage on something as simple as that. It's just so confusing to me.
And like how garbage would it have been too if, so this game's telling the story of this battalion. How garbage would it have been had they put a white guy on the cover and then tell you that story instead? Like,
you've already done that. You've been doing that. That's what we've been doing. Yeah. That's the game that we've been playing since I was a kid. It's ridiculous that you're going to keep on telling me the same style of story over and over. Like you got to evolve the format more than that. There's way more stories than just that. There really is.
And again, back to the whole, does it really matter who's on the cover? Like it's not affecting the gameplay. It's not affecting it affected the story in the sense of like, that's the story's focus, but like, it's not affecting the game. You're not getting, it's the same game.
Yeah.
Who cares who's on the cover? There's no reason to throw a fit. It's, all this outrage and everything just because of who they decided to put on the cover. Like everyone just calm down just a hair,
We, granted I speak for myself to a certain extent of this stuff. Like we, as white gamers, we've been the focus forever and a day That's what we were, the audience that they draw to. And we're finally getting to that point where we know inclusion needs to be there. We know that this stuff has to be there, every color of the spectrum. And unfortunately, what Twitter and Facebook and some of these other groups do is they create an echo chamber for this small core group of gamers that is the loud, obnoxious bastards.
Yeah.
The ones that should be the quietest because they're the smallest subset of this group. They get to be the loudest because there is no repercussions.
Yeah.
There's nothing out there stopping them from just being assholes. And unfortunately, that's where we're at right now. And I know you said, like I said, we'll talk about later, like, how do we fix that? That's a good question. Like, for as much as we want to try, like, where do we start this other than speaking up and having these kind of conversations and saying, like, I don't need to be the main character of this game. It doesn't need to revolve around me, and I can still enjoy this.
Well, and that's
like,
the thing. You start looking back at games, you're like, Street Fighter, Ryu, oh, fuck, that guy looks like me. Jedi Fallen Order, oh, fuck, that guy looks like me. Most of the Battlefield games, oh, fuck, that guy looks like me. Like, every single game is just a guy that looks like me. And if you're a white guy grown up gaming, it's awesome. But, like, so Sammy, what's the first female character that you identified with in a game in recent memory? 5 years, 10 years?
9 or 10 years. That I identified. That's a hard question.
Like, as a girl, did you ever have a character that, like, you clicked with? Like, for me, like, Nathan Drake in Uncharted, I was like, oh, fuck, look at my goddamn shirt. Like, obviously, baseball tee, dumb haircut, stupid white guy that's snarky. Like, I can see myself in Nathan Drake very, very instantly. So, like, is there any other character, like, I don't want to say, like, Samus Aran or, like, Lara Croft. Like, is there any female character that just clicked with you?
This is going to sound really stupid and just not stupid, but to kind of go back, I started playing on the PlayStation 1 era. I think I'm the youngest out of this group. I'm 27. Okay. That being said, I never have identified with a character because I'm depression, anxiety-ridden, blonde hair, blue-eyed, but I always tried to be Lara Croft in the sense of you can't fuck with me.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. So what was your first Lara, like, Tomb Raider title? Was it on the PlayStation 1, one of the early ones?
It was the number 2, actually. Tomb Raider 2.
Nice. So
I made a whole video about it.
How old were you when that came out?
God, that came out, 98, 99?
And so how long had you been, and I'm sorry, I'm asking you all these, like, date questions because, like,
no, you're good.
What I'm trying to do is get a data set of time. Legend of Zelda was like a little blurry, weird guy and stuff like that. And then finally evolved up to a point where I started seeing, like, Johnny Cage was like an awesome white guy in a video game and stuff like that. Yep. So I remember being young and kind of seeing myself in gaming, but I guess I'm trying to figure out is, like, how long did it take you in your gaming career to find something that really, like, identified and resonated with you?
So the one that I can really identify and resonate with me was Abby from The Last of Us Part 2.
Okay.
And that's the most recent memory that I've looked at a character and be like, I get you. One, nice. I'm a female who lifts. I love lifting weights. It's a passion of mine. I love the gym. I'm very goal oriented and I'm very focused. And when I want something, I achieve it. But I've also have a past that has driven me to seek revenge and be a very unhealthy individual in that sense. So to put that into a character was so fulfilling.
And so you beat me to it. So what I was going to ask is, like, so what does that do to you when you see yourself represented in a character and you can kind of play their journey and you can see some of their decisions and you can kind of understand what does that do to you as a gamer? It makes you feel fulfilled. What people, like those stupid subset groups that Jett was talking about, is they're talking about, well, if you're not making another white character, then we're losing ground. You fucking have that ground. You'll never not have those characters. Cal Kestis will never not be a redheaded white character. Like, that's who that is. And so finally, the redheaded community finally has a hero that they can kind of jump into. Like, that stuff is really important. And if you don't have new games that are looking like all the old games that you had, that's an okay thing, because that means people like Sammy can now be represented. Miles Morales, how many people, so we just lost Chadwick Boseman, T'Challa. How inspirational was Black Panther to that entire community? Right. And so you have a character like Miles Morales, and you're seeing these people that are getting so jacked up about that because representation matters. And I think for us, and Jett, you had said it very, very succinctly, it's on us as white gamers to just chill the fuck out about it and know that it's okay. You have no right to get outraged that they're making other games to represent other people. That is a great thing. That is an okay thing. And for some reason, white people get all up in arms about it. It's the craziest thing.
Sam and I've had discussion with like this core group in a broader sense of some of the other stuff that, as we learn, well, I'm sure we'll be able to talk in depth more. But it boils down to, for me, these people don't want to lose the status quo. Like, they're comfortable with where they're at. They don't want to see anybody but themselves put above themselves. And they're afraid that a Miles Morales is going to, an Aloy from Horizon Zero Dawn.
Love Aloy.
Like, that was one of my favorite games of 2017?
Yeah.
Like, one of my favorite games. Like, they're afraid that this is going to take away from them. And so they get to be as loud and obnoxious as they can. And I guess that's why I'm still dumbfounded that Brian Intihar, I think is how you pronounce his last name, like, why he's getting death threats for some minor facial tweaks to make the game better. Like, he's still your blue-collar white boy living down the street. They just cleaned it up to match what the voice actor is.
So to me, sticker shock, I get it. Like, so I have the platinum for that game. Briar has the platinum for that game. Did you guys platinum Spider-Man?
I didn't platinum because I need to go back through and do a couple of challenges and then do the DLC.
Did you beat it though?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so I mean, you beat that game if you played through all the DLC story. Like, I went through some shit with that version of Peter Parker, so I'm not as interested in the newer version because that's not the version that I saw say what he said to Aunt May toward the end of that storyline.
Yeah.
That's who that Peter Parker is for me. So I don't have an interest.
Aunt May.
I don't have an interest in doing that again with some other weird random white guy. I just don't care. You can tell me all day long about graphics and stuff like that, but that's not my version for this game universe like this version is. And that's a me problem to get over. Once I made my peace with that, I had no desire to go and talk shit to people about why it was wrong or whatever. Because if you really boil it down, this is just a fancier version of Pong, and they changed the ball from white to red. That's all they did. And people lost their shit over it. And it did not make sense, and it was not warranted, and it was not acceptable. And I think the biggest issue right now with toxicity in general is that there's no accountability.